So, ironically, or maybe unironically, or maybe hopefully will not be considered chauvinist, you both are our first female guests.
Wow. An honor.
And I can't be more grateful than that you're both headstrong, confident. I'm terribly afraid of both of you women. So I just want to say thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having us.
And for the people who don't know, sitting across from me is Representative Rosemary Brown from the 109th District.
189.
What, I couldn't say 180. Did I say it wrong?
109?
You said 109.
Did I?
Did he say 109? I thought I wasn't hearing right. No, don't
All right,
worry.
so this is off to a great start.
And rewind.
And take two.
I just wanted to make sure I heard
Monroe
it right.
and Pike.
Pike counties, right.
And next to me is Eileen Miller, who's been a friend for years. And so today I want to, I'm hoping to talk about government and House Bill 37. A little background on you, because I was doing my research. Is that you're a University of Scranton graduate?
That's right.
You got your BA. What did you get that in?
Communication.
Did you really?
Yes. So I was going to be a news journalist.
Really?
Yes. That was my path that I was planning. So here I am.
Was that from like a young age? That something you wanted? Were you watching too much WNEP or what was?
Yes, I actually had a WBRE.
Oh, really?
TV internship during college. And
this is fascinating.
I was the TV newswoman for college, anchor woman, when we run around with the microphone with all the kids at all the different functions. And it was fun. But, life leads you in different directions. So, but it's a communications degree and then business and minors in English.
I did not expect that.
Surprise, right?
So, and then you, if I'm not mistaken, you got into the business world, and you were, I forget some of the companies that you were working with. So it was like
completely different path from communications, but everything's communications in some way. And then the business path. So I ended up working for Federated Stores, which was Macy's at the time, became in their training program for their next presidents and store managers and things, and worked my way up through there, became an assistant buyer, and went back and forth from Pennsylvania to New York, and then was recruited over to Saks Fifth Avenue and managed their shoe division.
These are hoity-toity. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I managed a shoe division at Saks Fifth Avenue in New York. One of their shoe divisions. There's two, and had great shoes. Really great shoes at that time. I wore great shoes at that time.
According to my mother and my sister.
Still do. Yes. Yeah. Oh, you're still doing. Well, not to the level.
Men don't have that problem. You're like, oh, these Crocs are beautiful.
Yeah, right. Well, listen, I'm starting to appreciate the Crocs. And so, that became sort of the business background. And then I became a divisional manager for the Bon-Ton stores, came back to Pennsylvania.
I remember the Bon-Ton. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's one in the Summit. There's one in Clark Summit. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and then at that point, it became prevalent that maybe to use my business experience in a different market. And then I went into the pharmaceutical world, which has become very helpful, especially during COVID.
To navigate that?
I sold primary care, cardiology, neurology, and did a lot of antibiotics, antivirals. So sort of was in that arena, and that became my specialty before I left, and had 1, 2, 3 children, was working part-time, and then ran for office.
All right.
So you're going to have fun with this, aren't you?
I'm just curious on what your thought process was on it. And so she has 3, who I'm assuming are beautiful, wonderful children.
They are, knock on wood.
Kennedy, Carter, and Reagan. Does that blow your mind?
Bipartisan.
Bipartisan. What made you? So it seems to me that like politics was in your, at least in the deep recesses of your mind from a young age to do that. Who was the firstborn?
Kennedy.
Okay.
Kennedy. So really, I was not ever planning on being in office, and my children were all named well before I even decided to go into office. So I sort of look at that as a God wink in a way, that I named my children thinking on a presidential, mode.
Right.
But, and we often laughed and say, well, Kennedy was a definite. Carter was a great president, not a great president, but he was a good man. And he was probably better after presidency. in many ways.
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't know if I shouldn't say he wasn't
He's 8,000 years old.
I shouldn't say he wasn't a great president, but I think he was a nice man. And I think he did a lot of good things even after presidency. But really it was just, okay, my brother said, how about Carter? That's a great name, you know, and that kind of thing. And then Reagan is Reagan. And my daughter Reagan always says, I got the best name. So we sort of joke about, you know, each kid feels that their name is the best name as the president. But so it was sort of a mode that we had, but it wasn't political in nature as far as, you know, I'm going to run for office in any way. So it was interesting. So when I did decide to run for office, it became, nobody forgot the kids' names. And it was just, she's the one.
Where's President Brown?
Yeah. I remember being elected and getting sworn in, and 2 rows in front of me, one of the other legislators turned back and said, are you the one with the kids' names as presidents? Yeah, that's me. That's me, you know? So yeah, it's cute.
So was your family, like, growing up, was it more conservative or was it more liberal, or was it kind of like what I like to say purple, which is a little bit of both?
Yeah, I think my family was just very hardworking. There wasn't a lot of politics. It was just, I always constantly was surrounded with hard work. A father that, you know, I was born in the Bronx. And I was born in the Bronx. My parents were born and raised in the Bronx. And they wanted to take the 4 kids and get us into an area that they felt they would like to raise us in. And financially, it was difficult to go to some of those areas around New York that were more pricey. And
it seems like New York City pays for the rest of the state.
Yeah. Well, you know, but they just were looking. They came to the Poconos saying, you know, this would be a great place. And my mother was put on the top of a mountain, basically, in the Poconos. And my father went back and forth.
She's like, this is much better than concrete. This is much better than concrete and steel.
There's some grass. But that's how we ended up there. And they were just hardworking. You know, they're still very hardworking. My mother was traditional stay-at-home mom.
Right.
Good values, that type of thing. So they weren't very political, but they were purple, I think, in the fact of they just
Don't worry about that.
That's me?
No, that's me. Just hit decline.
So
that's embarrassing.
Yeah, we're trying to talk about a certain bill here.
For those who can't hear it, my phone won't stop ringing.
So anyway, but I think that's, you know, that was what I was always raised with. And I think when you look at the family structure and you look at our environment with politics right now, you know, it really should just be about what's important to the subject of everybody's house, how it affects you in your house. And so and as we get further in this conversation, I don't believe it's Republican or Democrat or anything political. It's the right thing to do.
I was, you know, and you and I have had political conversations before, and I was telling you as you walked in that I was a bleeding heart liberal when the whole pandemic started. And then I started to think about, there was so much divisiveness, and I kind of got, I guess, wrapped up in the blowing of the wind of that. And when, you know, the pandemic hit, and I was, you know, not to, you know, cry and moan about it, but I was one of the non-essential people. And I started to think, you know, why don't I like other people? And I started to really pay attention to what I was being told versus what was actually the truth of what happened. And I started to really second guess a lot of things. And then basically my ultimate conclusion came to was that Democrat, Republican, Independent, everybody wants to make sure that their kids are all right. And, you know, they're not going to go poor and hungry. And, you know, in the Venn diagram of life, it's, you know, why are we focused on the 1% we don't have in common? Instead, focus on the 99% that we do.
Exactly.
And that kind of, I don't know if it humbled me, or now I get angry at everybody instead of just one side. I'm like, that's insane. Why would anybody do that?
Well, you're looking at the real life. You're looking at the real issue and what's happening.
I think that's the thing that a lot of people don't pay attention to. They don't pay attention to it. It's like this tribalism, like where it's like you got to be. It's like the Steelers and the Eagles. It's like, wait, you're both from Pennsylvania. Like, what is it?
Right.
Why is this rivalry?
Right.
You know what I mean?
There's
like,
a
it doesn't
rivalry.
make sense.
Exactly.
Because the Steelers suck. That's why.
Oh, my husband would be with you. I'm a Green Bay fan.
Are you an Eagles person? Or,
no.
Okay. No, I didn't want to out you.
No, you know, he's a Cowboy fan. Yeah, and so that's a problem for Pennsylvania.
There's not a lot of love for Cowboy fans.
Right.
There's something about that.
No, and the Eagles and the Cowboys, forget it.
Yeah.
Right?
So real quick before we get to this, what was, a lot of people have like the impetus, like what was like the straw that broke the camel's back for you to be like, I'm going to be a crazy person and run for office? Because a lot of people, I mean, there's a joke there, but a lot of people say like, why would I want to subject myself to that?
Yeah, I really had someone approach me and say, we really need someone in office that, as you mentioned a little bit, was not born and bred to be in politics, has a strong business background, knows the area, his family, who really is a true public servant.
Right. More
than, well, this is a political person or this is somebody that just wants to be out there for the pictures and everything else. And I said no, actually, for probably about 2 or 3 weeks and started thinking through it a little bit more. I always have my mother to thank for this.
Or to blame.
Yeah. And I tell her that, but
no, not to blame.
Very
grateful.
It really is an honor. It's, but it's tough. It's a tough environment. And as we'll talk about the process a little bit, but, so I looked at it as a way to jump in and help and, see what I could do in an area that I actually was not very comfortable or familiar with, and walked in as a citizen legislator. And once I decided to run for office and thought of it that way, I didn't really look back. And I just kept working and working and working through the campaign. Not sure really if I was even going to be able to get the support. And a lot of times through my campaign, I don't know if I ever told Eileen this, I would get I was going against an incumbent.
How many years?
6 years the incumbent was in. And good luck, honey. Good luck. I got a lot of good luck honeys.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think
almost like in a dismissive way.
Yeah, I did. And I was 40 years old at the time. And a lot of great people too, though, that really, were very supportive. But because I think I didn't have that background or known in the community as being a political figure, when I came out in the woodwork, so to speak, as a business mother, resident for 40 years, in the Poconos, it was like, who's this girl? People knew my name or family, but they really didn't know me as someone that would be a political figure. So I think that appetite for people like that, I think should continue.
Sure.
I think that's what people want. And as long as you don't change when you're in office, you change a little bit because you get a little spicy. I told Eileen,
yeah, she does.
I get spicy. I always say you don't have to be nasty to be strong.
Right.
But
exactly.
I get spicy. And I think the spicy you need, but you also can't be spicy all the time.
No.
That you don't work with people and you don't, if you weren't in politics, I always say, would this be acceptable if you weren't in politics? No. So depending on how you interact with people or how you speak with people or how you conduct yourself in meetings, it's important. And it really does set a stage for people to want to help and work with you and get things done.
I think there needs to be a modicum of decorum, a little bit of respect. And I think, back to my lapsed liberal days, I think a lot of the times we lose nuance and we lose a lot of the things that, if we really sat and thought about it, it's like, well, wait a second. This is not a bridge too far. It's just the other side. And that should not be the wall that stops us from progress or at least a consensus.
Yeah. Everybody talks about it. But, when you take action, like what are your actions every day?
Right.
And strive for perfection. We know we'll never be there. None of us. But
no,
at least strive for it. At least strive to do your best. And I'm often very disappointed. Eileen knows that. I get disappointed in behaviors, but you can only really control your own. And then when you make a mistake on your own, you apologize or
own it.
Own it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I'm sorry. I should have done this a little different or I should have, approached this differently. But I think, if you're pretty much in control, the best that you can be of your own actions and you pay attention to it. You have to really pay attention to your own actions. And I think that often is sort of, pushed aside. Well, it's everybody else. Wait a minute. You got to stop and look and say, what am I doing to help it?
How's my participation here?
Am I helping? Am I making it worse?
Yeah.
What could I do better? Maybe it's not you, but sometimes you got to figure out how you can make it better.
So how did these two massive planets collide?
Well, so as everybody here knows, on July 5th of 2010 is when Paul got killed down in Monroe County by a semi-truck driver. So,
and then for those who don't know, it was a distracted driving accident.
Crash.
The man was not paying attention. Did I say it wrong?
Yes, you do not say accident. You say crash.
Crash.
An accident is
You've corrected me on this like a dozen times. I'm sorry.
That's all right. I'd still do it too.
Yeah. So in the distracted driving world, it's preventable. So if it's preventable, it's a crash. If it's an accident, that's when a deer runs out in front of you. Right. And so anyway, so Paul got killed. That was July 5th. Down then, the Pocono Record had a thing going on with their news media, which was Drive to Stay Alive campaign. And a lot of people don't realize too that like cell phones and things like that were pretty new into the driving experience. Yeah. Back in 2010, they were just coming out at the time, and nobody was really talking about it too much. It was out there, but it wasn't a big, today everybody knows. Everybody here has, everybody in this room, everywhere you go, everybody has the phone. So they were running a campaign after Paul had passed away. They were reaching out to me and they said, there's a drive out going on. It's Drive to Stay Alive campaign, and it's with the Safe 80 Task Force in Monroe County. And I said, anything I can do to get awareness, I want to be involved. So when we had it, Rosemary was excuse me, Representative Rosemary Brown. I'm so, I have to say that.
How dare you first name basis people? How dare you?
Well, she's like my best friend now, but of course.
You always should call me Rosemary.
Okay, Rosemary, I'm sorry. So, she was just elected in November. So they started
this
in September
2010.
Okay.
So right away, we kind of, I don't know what it was, but I have this thing I don't know what to call it, but I can adapt to people I know right off the bat, just like with you. Some people, I right away get this feeling for them. Other people, I don't. It's like, stay away. But as soon as she came in, she was a new mom. Her kids were so small at the time back then. She was newly elected. And we kind of clicked. I kind of knew. She came right over to me right away, told me how sorry she was about Paul's crash at the time. And then after that, I started to advocating more and more. I was going nationally from state to state, advocating for better laws in different states like Florida and Virginia and all of that. And I would come back with the information and be saying, like, this is what they're doing in different states. And as we kept meeting in that, I would come back with the information. And then the meetings, we had the Safe 80 Task Force, we were going on, and I would come back and give this information. And, there was other representatives there, but I kept coming up to Rosemary, kept saying, we need a law, we need a law, we need a law. And she would say, not at this time, because back then phones weren't really the thing back then. People
I think the
weren't
iPhone
really.
was just out for like.
Well, they were doing the texting a little bit.
A lot, yeah. The texting law was coming out, and then in 2012 they did come out with the texting law, and I knew back then they were never going to be able to enforce it. I knew when it came out.
What was that law? What was
Josh Shapiro had
$50.
$50, and you could hold it, but I knew even then, and all the police were excited about it. They thought, great, this is a great bill. We're going to be able to do it. But I knew even back then they were never going to be able to enforce it. They couldn't tell if you were holding it, scrolling, texting, emailing, but I kept approaching. Every time I would see her at the meetings, I'd be like, we need a bill, we need a bill, we need a bill. And she would be like, it's not. And then, eventually, but every other representative and other representatives down in Harrisburg had bills, but they were not a bill that I would stand next to them at, down in Harrisburg, but I just knew that Rosemary was going to be my person.
I mean, also it's difficult as a freshman.
Oh, absolutely. That was definitely part of it. Yeah. I think that,
do I want to rock the boat or do I?
And you're learning, and I think.
And I knew that too.
Yeah.
I talked about it.
Exactly. And I think that's the piece of the procedure sometimes that people have to realize when someone's newly elected too. There is a learning curve and there is a confidence, kind of, when you're kind of detouring around everything and trying to figure out.
It takes a minefield.
Yeah. It takes you 2 years to find the bathrooms, we always say, right? And then you're up for election again.
I think one of our guys around here just ran on, why are you qualified? I know where the bathrooms are.
Right.
I was like, I don't know if that's a qualification.
Right. But it's funny, right? You joke about it, but it really, there has to be, again, that realistic place of it. But with Eileen and hearing this, and you're going to these meetings over and over, and you're hearing the devastation over and over. And, you see the cell phone utilization building.
Right.
But, when they did the texting law and I was in office, it was one of the first bills. I remember saying to myself, this is terrible. Like, this can't, it's $50.
Right.
It's not enforceable. And
was it a secondary offense?
It was primary. But there was no way.
You could do it at a stop sign. You could do it at the stoplight.
How could a police find that?
There's too much gray area.
Yeah, way too much.
Yeah. And the thing was, I mean, in my gut, I remember, I think, telling Eileen, in my gut, this is terrible. This is what I feel now in my experience is a bill that looks good on a press release.
Right. It looks good for like the news.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm fighting that right now with this bill. That never worked. And I should have went with my gut early on and spoke up more. I'm upset that I didn't. But again, because you're still in that, paying attention, kind of watching the process, saying, is this just me or is there really something wrong? Or maybe I'm not experienced enough in this process to know that this is a great bill. Sure enough, about a year later, I said, your gut's always right.
Right.
But again, being a newer member of the legislative body, it takes some time to feel that confidence, I think, and to really value what the bill is and isn't.
So coming from, number one, your advocacy was basically in the same early stages as her.
Yeah.
Legislating, right?
Well, you're grieving, as you're a grieving mom, I mean, I still don't even think I grieved my son because, shortly after that, within 2 years, Paul was diagnosed with ALS.
Right.
Which was
that's your husband.
That's my husband, Paul. So it was like, I was just basically told my husband's going to pass away because they normally tell you, 3 to 5 years. So I'm like, I got the bullet twice. I'm like, my son just died. Now my husband's going to die. So you're kind of in that like whirlwind, but I'm doing everything I can. And I was always that safety mom even before Paul died. I was always, we had the Razor scooter and my daughter and I'm like helmets, knee pads, all this. I got the scooter, you're
covering them in Nerf.
Yeah. I mean, even all his friends, when they were out drinking, I was going picking them up, tell them, I never want to go to a morgue to pick you up. Never want to go to a morgue to pick you up. And
that's an NAPA thing with parents. Parents are, we will come. I don't care if it's 4 o'clock in the morning.
Pledge, right?
I will come get you.
Yeah.
No questions asked. We'll yell at you tomorrow.
I mean, and a lot of his friends were like, oh my God, I can't tell my parents. And I'd be like, I'll come pick you up. And I've done that several times. And in this case, Paul did every single thing right. I mean, he didn't even have any alcohol in his system. He was further than where he thought. He was supposed to be in ESU at Stroudsburg, and he wound up being all the way down in Bethlehem. So he wasn't familiar with the area. And even work, he called that morning coming back and he's like, listen, I was scheduled to work. I'm going to be late. He called Garrity's and Garrity's like, Paul, go home, take a shower. Whenever you get here, you get here.
Yeah.
He was so responsible. He did everything right. It was somebody else's. And that's what we're talking about with the cell phone. It's people driving on the road. It doesn't always have to be that person texting around the phone. In this case, it was somebody else's mistake.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to with this bill is tell people, do you want to kill yourself or do you want to kill somebody else? I mean, I know many families that it was their child that was texting. And a lot of them like, oh, you don't want to be my friend because it was my child. No, that has nothing to do with it.
Is there like a shame there with them?
There is, unfortunately. And I don't mean just them. When I'm out speaking, I have parents that will come up to me and they're like, my child died from texting. But when I go to the statistics, they're not on there. When Paul got killed in 2010, he's a road crash fatality. He's not even listed in distracted driving because the police were not the ones who looked at that phone. It was only during our investigation that we found out. It was his statements. He was like, I had to ping my one phone to my other phone that was jammed underneath the seat. And that's when I looked up and I saw Paul's car crash in front of me. He never even knew he hit Paul. He crossed 2 lanes of grassy medium, pushed him back into an embankment, and then a van following behind my son, who had 12 people in it, hit the tractor trailer. So he didn't even know he hit Paul. It was when he went to look for his phone.
And he was in a tractor trailer.
This was a Ryder tractor trailer driven by Best Buy. He was just delivered Best Buy supplies in Stroudsburg and then was on his way to go to New Jersey. And this is on Route 33 in Hamilton Township.
So distracted. It's almost like having an open container in your car and you're drinking.
This is worse.
What are
Distracted
the things,
driving is worse now than
so
DUI.
what are the things like so for people who don't know, people are just like, oh, I'm just checking my Facebook or I'm looking at my Instagram. Like what actually goes on in those milliseconds in your brain or on the road? What, like, for people who don't understand, like when you look at your phone and look, there are many people who are guilty of this.
Oh, yeah.
Who are very, very guilty of this.
So there's a lot of statistics out there, but it's like when you're reading a text in 5 seconds, you go the whole length of a football field by looking down.
That could be a child
text.
walking across. That could be another vehicle, a dog, a bear.
Absolutely.
You don't
fruit
know.
stand.
You don't know what you could do in that time frame. I mean, how many times have you seen somebody at night walking with dark clothing on the side of a road?
I've been driving by people. I didn't even see them there. And
exactly.
I just
and imagine if somebody's, so you don't really know what could happen. But the interesting piece, or the piece that I think we continue to try to remind people about is, and we get it in Harrisburg, well, what if you're drinking water? What if you're drinking a soda? What if you're eating something?
All distracting.
You're distracted. How are you going to, in the car of someone, it's overreaching. You're telling people too much to do it. No, that's not the case. You can drink your coffee. You can drink your water. The cell phone is very different. It's a consistent, addictive distraction.
It's the number one distraction.
And it takes a longer time of concentration on it. And so, if you use it, it's not, listen, every distraction you have to be concerned with.
Right.
And you have to be a responsible driver. But when you have this technology being utilized when you're not looking at the road, it's like I said, it's consistent, it keeps going, and it holds your attention much longer than almost any other distraction that you have.
If you're drinking a cup of coffee, you're not going to look at your cup of coffee and go, that's an interesting cup of coffee, and keep paying attention to your coffee.
Right.
Right.
And even after you're done reading an email of that, it takes your brain seconds later to even come back to looking back at the road.
So
what I mean?
So you would tell me there's a chemical that happens in your brain when you look.
It's dopamine. Yeah.
Okay.
It's dopamine.
So Dan, look up dopamine.
Well, it's like when you get that pain. I want to
explain what dopamine is to people.
Well, so when you're,
it's basically like a reward.
Well, just like you just got that ping. You got that ping. You looked at it. Whenever you get anything, you get a squirt of dopamine that goes off of your brain, and it's like an addiction. You want to keep going for it, reaching for it, looking at it, see what it is.
It's an endorphin release. That's why everybody's so obsessed with constantly checking their Facebook.
Exactly.
Constantly check because you want to go back, you want to see that like, and it makes us feel good about ourselves. We go, oh, okay.
Right.
I posted a stupid picture when I got down here.
Right, exactly.
Right. It's what they talk about with the kids, right? On the depression and everything, with how many likes and this taking over.
That's why people are constantly doing videos, goofy, weird videos. No,
she was. Okay. She was.
Do you want me to say
Podcasts are very important, though. Just so everybody knows, podcasts are very important.
Yes, everybody, we want you to look at our podcast. Yes, but I'm just saying that's why people do stupid stuff, and then they want to see the reward, and then when they get a like, and then a like, they want to keep going back to it and look at it to see they're getting a reward. That's why people keep going.
I mean, there's something about this technology thing. And we're all guilty of using it, and because it's convenient. It's like, I don't have to go to the river to get my water. I can just turn the faucet on. Like, I understand the convenience of it. But when you talk about, I think you just brought up a good point about, like the studies in children. I think there's an impending danger, or a danger that's already there, that we don't fully understand the scope and breadth of what it is doing to the idea of human existence. For either children or, how many things have we heard of outside of distracted driving using these devices where children are like, unfortunately, some of them commit crimes against themselves. It's
right.
And it's this GD don't like.
You'll often hear it referred to, even with different organizations, as digital wellness. Mm-hmm. There's a fact of trying to create digital wellness among society, among children, among adults. And that means putting the phone down for, rest time, brain time, the sleep time that you need, putting it down an hour, 2 hours before you go to bed. And just the overall digital wellness, which is how much technology are we using? How much are we present in our lives besides with the technology. It's becoming a very big term that you're starting to hear, and it comes from responsibility with digital. It comes to health with digital, everything. So you'll start to hear that more.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope there's going to be like some major change about, and nobody wants to. I don't think anybody in this world wants to take rights away from anybody. I think if you educate them on the dangers of it,
Listen,
maybe that's something that.
Nobody.
And I'm not talking about distracted driving. I'm talking literally about these stupid screens.
Right. Literally. I mean, listen, with my husband, technology, I'm going to need it for him. I mean, he's losing his voice.
There's benefits, absolutely.
There's absolute benefits to it. It's just where you're going to use it. Behind the vehicle is not the place to use it. Your one and only goal is to just get in your vehicle and to just drive. But technology for certain people, absolutely. I think technology is great. It's just where you're going to use it.
Well, we talk about that with legislators.
Right.
I can't tell you how many hearings I've watched where everyone's just looking at their phone, and I'm like, you are not engaged in this process at all.
Even when they're in the Capitol.
That's what I'm talking about.
It's consistent.
I watch hearings, I watch all this stuff, and it's like, oh, Senator blah, 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 you got to talk. He's like, oh, sorry, I was just checking my sports scores. Just like.
I mean, I had friends that were lobbyists when I was living in Virginia, and they'd be on C-SPAN, and we'd be texting, and we'd be laughing at the idea that you're sitting there doing your job, and like, ha, look at me, I'm at work, you're on my TV.
No,
that's a bizarre.
It really is, and it's the focus, the attention to details that we're missing.
Yeah.
And so that's where, you look and you say, when you get into the car, this technology is fantastic. I mean, in jobs like mine and others where people are wondering, why didn't you get back to me right away? How come I can't get in touch with you? Where are you? And so
50 years ago, I needed to write you a letter.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I think the legislators themselves, and even before working with Eileen, and you say guilty, I say all the time, I was guilty, and and it's a struggle because of the job, because of the technology that allows you to get things done.
Right.
It is a struggle. And I think there's a lot of legislators, even when you approach this subject, that are scared of that.
Mm-hmm.
What? Don't take my dopamine away.
Yeah. Maybe they're scared. Maybe they're scared they're going to get pulled over.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And and with
I just saw a representative, and I think of Michigan or something, got pulled over for that, and he flipped out.
Really?
Oh yeah.
So, and that's the thing, you should not be scared of doing the right thing.
Yes.
Right. And that's where everybody can admit to doing better. As we said in the beginning of the podcast, nobody's perfect, but you have to, the whole reason behind this legislation to put the phone down is responsibility. It's when you get behind that wheel, you have a responsibility that comes with your license, that comes with being on a public roadway of other people. It's just, we refer to it often as DUI.
Right.
It
doesn't need to be booze or drugs.
Right. No. We have DUI laws, and we have DUI laws because we're setting a standard of responsible behavior. We have expectations of you and your behavior before you get behind that wheel for the safety of others. Same thing with this. It's setting up behavior, expected behavior of responsibility, and putting the phone down gives you're still distracted. And we want to make sure we say that because even when you're hands-free, you're still distracted.
Are you talking like Bluetooth and CarPlay?
Yes, absolutely.
But we're trying to minimize it.
You are.
And I think that's when you talk about being fair and not overreaching. That's what this is.
I think that when you even brought up before about the legislators and like when Dan said, hey, I'm texting it. I mean, when you do that, I just black and white. You can't deny that in that moment, that person is distracted from doing their job, even in the House of Representatives or the Senate. So why is it that far of a leap of logic to say in a moving missile of steel?
Absolutely.
How is that not an issue?
Sometimes in the process, I think you talk about all the reasons why you shouldn't do something or ways to block it, and you leave out all the reasons why you need to do it.
Right.
And why it should be done. And there's this thought in this political arena.
You guys are giggling.
Well, listen, you talked about
I'm happy you're having a good time.
You talked about
a good time. Believe me, it's very heart-wrenching.
It's in this political environment with, talking points or, getting on a bandwagon of whatever position you're on or side, and you lose sight of Have you paid attention to what's happening when you're on the road? Have you looked? You don't want to be looking all over the road, but have you looked to the driver next to you or the truck that swerved right before you went past them and say, why are they swerving? Every time that happens, I look up on my way back from Harrisburg. They're on the phone.
They're on the phone.
Every time somebody swerves, every time there's a problem, I'll say to my kids when they go by, if they're with me, and I'll say, do me a favor. What are they doing? They're on the phone, Mom. Or they're texting, they're looking down. And they've swerved.
Right.
They've swerved right before we pass them. Right, Dan's shaking his head. And it's
you
true.
Know who they are.
You pay attention to it.
They are.
So, there comes a time when you say, when do you think it's going to cause a safety problem for you or a family member? And that's really Eileen's heart in this has been broken and twisted, and it's been awful.
Right.
And, I have said it, and I've said it to legislators. If there was someone in this building that lost a child, this would be law.
It would be. And that's the sad part. We're trying to prevent it from happening to somebody else. We have had some representatives that it's happened to.
Oh, yeah.
And now
since 2010.
Yeah.
Since 2010, who really were not overly supportive, but then said.
Now they're extremely supportive.
But have been wonderful.
Fantastic.
So I think,
fantastic.
But it's almost like.
Well, that's human nature. It's not to cast aspersions on people like that.
No. And they have been great. And they were supportive before.
They were.
They were very supportive before, but now
they're
not as active.
Now extremely active. But that's the part. You don't want anybody else to pass away. You don't want anybody else to die. And the part of it is they have completely lost all the common sense out of the bill.
Right.
They have completely lost all the common sense.
What was it at the beginning versus now? Like, what was the common sense things versus?
Can't even remember the original bill.
How many times has the bill been amended already?
We've been 6 years at this, right?
So you have
it's going to be 7 years.
So you have your original document, your original intention, right? And so this is part of the process. So I think that a lot of people don't understand, you remember the School of Rock, I'm just Bill.
Yeah, sitting here on Capitol Hill. And that's what I used to think. And people don't realize this. I'm just a mom with a broken heart doing this. I got thrown into politics, which I never thought in a million years I ever would be.
Right.
Rosemary knows I go down to the Capitol, and it's 2 hours for me to go down. I'm there probably 3 or 4 hours, and I'm 2 hours back. And
she is productive.
I go into every representative. I beg them to be on the bill.
Yeah.
She's not shy.
No.
I'm not shy. I won't leave. I've been to see many majority leaders, many a Speaker of the House, and I sit there and I'm like, I'm not leaving until I talk to you. I demand, and people don't know that you have to do that. I didn't know. I just ask what I have to do. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know if this is what I have to do, but I'm doing it. And if they give me a no, I just start whipping pictures of my dead son or the crash at them and be like, what if this was your child? What if this was your child? Get it done. I'm not leaving until you do this. And until it affects you, then you're going to be sorry, and that's not the way I want to do it. But if I get a no response, that's what they're getting from me.
So how does this process work? In other words, how do you write legislation? How do you introduce it? And then how does, fingers crossed, it eventually makes its way into actually.
Okay, go
just
ahead.
for people who don't know.
How long is this podcast? How long is this podcast?
They don't teach civics in school anymore. So
yes.
A quick synopsis.
And just so you know, I put out the I'm just a bill very often. I put it out every once in a while and people love it, but it's really true.
It's
you
great.
have to be
reminded.
reminded.
People are like, oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
it's true though.
I watch it with my kids all the time on Disney Plus.
It's really great.
It is a great.
Yeah.
It's go ahead.
This
is yours.
Well, listen, Eileen really could be a legislator because she understands the process and of running around and doing it. But I always say the best ideas and the best things come from your constituents or from the people.
Right.
And you got to remember what legislation is trying to do is fix a problem. You have to have, what are you trying to fix? And that usually comes from a situation that's come up once or over and over and over, or there's something new that has evolved with an old law that's, causing a problem. So what are you trying to fix?
Right.
And then you draft a piece of legislation that you think will do the fix. Now that fix could be, have all these provisions in it, but when you put it down on the table and you have your bill which is not a law yet, it's just the draft,
Mm-hmm.
you start to have advocacy groups that are, with transportation, you have AAA and you have all different organizations, but you have these advocacy groups, PennDOT, they will say, are you crazy? Or what are you going to do about this piece in the bill? This doesn't work for our organization because, or this doesn't work for our organization because. Meanwhile, you say, yeah, but I need this in the bill to accomplish the fix. But oftentimes you become educated sometimes and say, I didn't think about that. That's a good point. All right. How do we fix that so we don't have an unintended consequence?
Sure.
And then, you adjust that or you amend it. And that's what we say with the amendment process. If Eileen was a legislator, she might say, Rosemary, I like the bill, but we need to fix this piece of it. And that's the amendment. And that will happen, a good portion. And then if you get it to a good, now I want legislators to sign on.
Right.
And say, Rosemary, I like this.
So is that in like concept. Committee before that happens? Is there like committee or groups or like who are like discussing?
Well, so what'll happen is I'll draft something, I'll come up with a fix, and then I'll put out what we call a co-sponsor memo. Basically like an email if you were a fellow legislator.
If you believe in this.
Yeah, listen, I had this problem come up. I'm trying to fix this. I want your support. Here's the legislation. I like to put, if I can, legislation in my memo so people can actually read the legislation as compared to just a concept.
Yeah. Oh, I got to download the PDF. I'm not looking. You're just like, no, it's there.
Right.
You have no excuse now.
So sometimes you sign on to legislation, or there it is. Sometimes you sign on to legislation wording, or you sign on to a concept. Right. If you sign on to a concept, that would depend on a lot of different things. It could just be an email, memo. And if I worked with you, I would trust you. I would know what you're going after. I would know the issue probably pretty well.
Right.
But otherwise, I like to put the legislation. Every legislator does it different. Mm-hmm. So you put out that email and you say, hey, would you put your name on this? And as you can see behind my name, Representative Malagari is a Democrat member who is now sort of co-sponsoring this with me, helping out with the Democrat members.
So it's bipartisan.
There's bipartisan support for this?
Yes, the great part.
I haven't heard of that in 20 years. What's that feel like?
It's great. It's good.
It is good. And I think, again, this is affecting, it doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican, you're on the road driving.
Yeah. This is everybody on the road.
Yeah. So Malagari has jumped in and approached me to sort of help with this, which I think was great. And then you see other names listed. Now, I think there's more than this on here now, too.
And normally this is my part. I call everybody and I'm like, hey, get on this bill. I call every representative and be like, get on the bill. Now, they don't.
Do you think in some of these offices, they're like, she's on the phone again?
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
This is where I come in and I'll either go down and visit them or I'll call them on the phone and be like, but they don't necessarily have to co-sponsor it. It's voting, which is the most important thing.
Right.
Exactly.
The vote is where we need. Yeah.
So after this happens, depending on the time frame, our secretaries would formally introduce the bill. And then that's just an administrative process. It formally gets introduced. And at that time, the Speaker's office decides what committee it goes into. And obviously this went into the Transportation Committee. And then there's Republican and Democrat members. I was on the Transportation Committee at one point, and I am still actually now. I'm forgetting. They pulled all my other committees. So I'm still on there. But then we would take the vote if the chairman brings the bill up, is willing to bring the bill up and says
somebody has to say, so the chairman has to go, we are going to look at this.
Chairman has a lot of control. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so we've had great chairmen.
Yeah.
They have run the bill out of committee and we've had bipartisan support for it. Both Representative Chairman Carroll and Chairman Hennessy this session, Democrat and Republican, have been excellent. So I think, but that often happens. So if it hits the committee like that, and if some of these organizations or some of this other representatives have problems with the wording in the bill, they'll say it's not ready for a vote yet. You need to work on it more, or you need to jump. So is that almost
like the advocacy groups, but now it's actually like in the legislature?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they might have.
You could have the reps being critiquing the bill tremendously, or you could have advocacy groups
who are basically lobbying the representatives to be like, hey, this doesn't work.
This doesn't work. You need to work with Representative Brown or Malagari on this and fix this, or if not, we don't want a positive vote on this bill. Yeah. So it depends on the chairman. It depends on how much they want the bill ready. But you have to remember, after it goes, if it passes through the committee, there are many times that it is a long process, and you might not love a bill in committee. You might like most of it, but you would say, I'll vote for it. But you might make a statement that says, but I would like to see this done with it. And I would like to see this done with it. And I hope the sponsor of the bill is willing to work with me on an amendment when it reaches the full House floor. And so you might get a vote in committee. And then if it goes onto the full House floor, there might be amendments that are agreed to that
outside of committee.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Just on conversation.
Oh my God.
Like you and I meet. And listen,
you know why we were exhausted?
And to get a vote on the House floor, to get the bill brought up for the House floor for a vote is a whole nother escapade. So, right. It is not guaranteed that something goes through committee and it's actually going to get a vote on the House floor. You go through that same process again. And now I've got 203 members, Democrat and Republican, not just, a small committee to deal with.
To all agree.
And leadership, to say, we're going to bring up House Bill 37 for vote. So that's the stage we're at right now with House Bill 37.
When did you start rolling this rock up the hill?
It's going to be almost 7 years.
That's when you first wrote the first
draft.
First draft.
Yeah, that's when it was 16.
The number
1637.
I can't even remember the number.
1637, and then it became House Bill 37.
So
no, it was 1684, wasn't it?
I don't know.
It was
1684.
It was 1684, and I'm like,
I'm not in Harrisburg. I just googled this.
Excuse me. It was 1684.
I'm trying to do my best here, Eileen. I'm trying.
It was 1684. I know these numbers by heart.
I know
1684. I know the numbers by heart. Now it's House Bill number 37.
So I mean, it sounds arduous. And I'm not trying to be hyperbolic. I mean, it sounds.
And I didn't go to school for any of this. I just got thrown into this. And poor Rosemary, sometimes I feel like she looks at me and goes, oh God, why did Eileen get me into this? But she was the chosen one because I knew she would be the only one who would really do it for me.
Well, in the beginning, I think it was, again, very similar. Good luck, that kind of thing. And I think timing is everything, but it's a shame because if this was in place, there's still going to be crashes, just like there's still DUIs.
Yeah.
But you do your best to save lives as much as you can or change the behaviors. And it takes a long time to change behaviors. And so we can't tell everyone what to do, nor will we want to. We're trying to change a behavior or strengthen a behavior for responsibility. And, if you look at Democrat and Republican principles, everybody needs to be responsible. There's no difference there.
Sure.
So,
yeah. Listen, if this was me, I would want a complete ban, but I know that
I think if it was you, it'd be a dictatorship and it'd be like, we're passing this bill.
Listen,
all the other rules still apply, but this bill's going to be passed.
I chase people down all the time when I see them on their phone because they're almost crashing into me. And I have those big magnets all over my car.
You're going at strangers.
Well, the thing of it is,
you're like, hey, you're on your phone. You got these things. You got these at like the dollar store for all the excuses.
Yeah. Well, for those representatives that keep saying, you don't want to dictate, or
it's going to cost money.
It's going to cost money. I just got this at the dollar store. And you just plug it into the vent and you can put your phone right on there. And these are at Walmart for $5. So for those representatives who keep telling us over and over again, you have to buy an infotainment system in their car and all that. No, $5. I've been passing these out to people that are waving and hitting me.
Who are they talking about? The Kardashians? Like,
they're
I need the $700.
$5 at Walmart. It's the sticky thing right there. You peel it off. You open it. You put your phone in. And these are $1 at the dollar store. I just bought them all out. I bought a bunch of them. So I pass them out to people, when I see them driving down and
so
their
for $3,
phone is
you could potentially save 3 lives.
Easily.
For $3.
Yes. And like I said, my phone is never on. When people ask me to endorse an app or ask me what to do, I endorse the off button. You know me.
Yeah.
And you know I've called you out.
You have like the CIA bag.
Well, I called everybody out.
Interesting.
And this is another, it's called a cell slip. So you put your phone in. My phone is on right now. But if you called me on this right now, it blocks all calls.
I wish at the beginning of the podcast I had my phone in there.
Yeah, I know. Put it in right now. It could go. 2 of them can go in here. Give me it now. Put it in there.
Eileen, that seems dirty.
Come on, put the 2 of them together.
Yeah,
put them in there. If I see you look at your phone one more time, I'm going to smack you.
Well, I'm doing it because Dan's texting me.
Well, Dan, quit. Dan, do you want me to come over there and smack you?
I think he felt he was all right because we're not behind a wheel. I think that's what he was.
It doesn't matter. We're in an important thing. We're talking about
So what
important stuff here.
What does the bill say?
Well, and I was just thinking about that as you were showing these devices. So for people that are listening, I mean, we want to get the phone out of your hands.
Right.
Yeah.
And by
so
getting...
for other people are like, you're taking my phone. Like, what do you actually say?
Yeah. Listen, until technology catches up with safety, I think that's the key. And really, the only thing that's probably going to really, really help this down the road is autonomous vehicles. And you start like to
Tesla?
say... Yeah, vehicles that drive themselves because, if you think about it, right, Eileen, I mean, that's, and so we have slightly autonomous, slightly not, but you have these different aspects of autonomous vehicles, questionable on many levels. But I think that when you
sometimes I think it gives a false sense of security.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
I agree with you.
That's why all the crashes have been with people that were on their phone.
Right.
Yeah. But I agree with you. And I think
the autonomous I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I think that's where, when is the technology and the safety? Is there a way? Would it be caught up? So it's not there, obviously.
Right.
And the use of the cell phone is building and building and building. And as Eileen said, even during COVID, everything was order ahead, order online, do this. So people are driving to get their pickup at their fast food or their food
also
place.
The Uber drivers are looking at their phones, like the Uber Eats, the DoorDashes, like all those people are having, and they're on a time crunch.
And there was more crashes during Zoom than ever because people were speeding and people were zooming behind the wheel. So even though there was less
people were
on the road,
Zooms in the vehicles.
yes.
Get out of Dodge.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Moving.
Yes.
I think that's important to note. And I know Eileen talks very often like no phone in the car because even if your kids are watching, the mindset.
Paw Patrol.
The mindset is to change that the phone is not for the car.
Right.
And so Eileen feels very strongly. And I think it is a very good behavioral training for the family and for the children.
Especially
that the cars.
kids.
Yeah. But I mean, like, listen, I sometimes... and it has happened for me, and I think Eileen knows this. Mm-hmm. If I'm out and about and a reporter wants to do an interview, I say, listen, I have no place to go. I can do it in my car, but I'm not moving. Yeah, I'm in a parked car, and that's it. But I have seen and experienced Zoom moving vehicles, and
that is baffling.
Yes.
I just
put it on
speakerphone. Did a symposium and somebody did it. And I was kind of appalled.
Wait, it's your symposium?
No, it was a symposium that I was on, and they had somebody come in.
Call in while I'm 81?
She did a fake background, but I could see where she was. She was definitely doing it behind the wheel, and I texted the person, and I was like, they are absolutely zooming behind the wheel, and I'm like the victim here on this program, and this is ticking me off. And she said it will be addressed. But you could tell they had a fake background. But
their hair's blowing.
Well, you could see all the traffic going behind, but they had a fake background. That's like the one representative that time that was doing the Zoom call with the seatbelts. Oh, excuse me.
That's right. Had the seatbelt on, but the background was
going. Yeah.
So the background was changed, but the seatbelt was
still there.
Insane.
No, I'm telling you, it happens all the. I actually know a lot of people that do this all the time, that they'll say like, well, they've lost loved ones, due to distracted driving, but they'll do selfies or they'll have somebody else in the car driving. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but that you should never have anything in the car at all.
Yeah.
And this is a reason why, because I've had kids that were in the car in the back seat, young children, and they'll say, well, how come that person has the phone in the front seat, but that person doesn't? They don't know the difference of who's driving, who's not. So why is it okay for the passenger?
They don't understand the consequence of it, yeah.
So if you're talking about distracted driving in your vehicle and you're someone who has lost someone, a child, a 4, a 5, a 6-year-old doesn't know the difference of why is the passenger have a phone and is recording or talking, but not the driver. And in their brain, they're confused because this has been brought up to me several times by young youth, like young kids. And they have brought this up to me. They're like, why is it okay for that person in that seat to have the phone, but not the person in that seat? And then another time, someone was driving and had the phone, and they said, well, why is that person okay having the phone, but not that? So for a young child who's only 5 or 6 years old, confusing. It's very confusing. So my point is, don't have any phone on in the car, and that person is not going to be confused at all. If you are educating anybody about distracted driving, my point of view, this is my point of view, but I think it's a very smart point of view. Don't have any phone on in the car at all. Like, don't have the phone at all, so they're not going to be confused.
So what is this bill? What does Bill 37 say? Like, if it says don't have it in your car, if you do have it in your car, like what is, like, in essence, elevator pitch, Bill 37.
It's very, very simple. And this version of the bill, after all this work, is simplified to no end. And it's meant to be reasonable, not overreaching, and minimize the distraction. Basically says, we want the phone out of your hand. We don't want supported by any part of your body. When you go like this and you put the cell phone. Mm-hmm. So not in the hand, not supported by any part of your body. So basically, you can still use your phone. Has to be on speaker, Bluetooth, however you want. If a police officer sees you holding it, sees you up like this, sees you texting like this, that's it.
And we all know
you're going to be pulled over.
You're going to be pulled over.
And we all know that light at nighttime when you're driving on the highway and you're like, oh, that person's...
Or FaceTiming.
Well, and the other thing I think that's really important is you talked about behaviors and training behaviors. That is so important. And Eileen's really brought my attention to that more, but we talk about digital wellness too.
Right.
So the bill is not meant to hurt people. This bill is not meant, it's meant to save people. So you look at $100 fine. And actually the first 6 months, there's warnings. It's listed as warnings to try to help people understand and bring attention to their behavior. And we hope that nothing tragic happens during that warning time. That obviously they're not, if there's a crash, we would know. But, it's a warning time to change behaviors for people. And then if you are cited, it's $100. There's no extra fees. There's nothing. There's no points to your license.
No points.
And in the beginning, I really do want the points because I think that's where it hits people but again, we don't want to hurt people. I don't want people's insurance bills to go up. I don't want that. We want to save people. And so this is meant to do our best to change the behavior. So put the phone down, still use it if you want to. But Eileen's message and mine is always, hey, really the best cell phone use is no cell phone use.
So what are the critics saying?
The critics,
Okay, what can you divulge that the critics are saying?
I think it's pretty simple. Don't tell me what to do in my car. Okay. I'm not going to be able to use my cell phone.
Is that across the political spectrum?
No, I think a little bit more on the Republican side.
Don't tell me what to do in my car.
I think a little bit more.
Yeah.
And listen, I'm a Republican.
Yeah.
I'm a common sense Republican, and I think I would say, you have a little bit. You might have a little bit on the Democrat side with that, or they say, well, we got to do all distracted driving, but that's also a way.
I think that gets ridiculous.
It stopped the bill too. It's also a mechanism they're trying to do to stop the bill.
If you wanted to.
Right.
Yeah.
And listen, we're trying to minimize. Again, we're not saying you're not going to have any crashes. We hope that we really don't.
It's to reduce them.
They are.
To reduce them and minimize it. But and so I think the other piece also is, you're not. How do we know that this is actually safer than having it up to your ear or having it, because you know what, you're not looking down here like this.
Right.
You could probably touch your phone to make a call but we can't, the way that
there's nothing that's going to be perfect.
We cannot change every aspect of it because it's impossible.
Right.
Yeah.
But and I think that's what happens is, every little thing comes up. Well, I could touch my phone to do this, or I could. Yeah, you can. But you know what? Let's hope by the states that have done it have shown less overall cell phone use when it's docked, because it's reminding them that, I shouldn't be on the phone.
So we're in the Keystone State. So New York, New Jersey, Maryland, Ohio.
All around us have it.
Who has these bills?
They all do. We're the
all
only one.
Of them have them.
Well, we got about 21 states now. 22, 21?
I think 22 now.
Ohio just did.
So all our neighboring states have it. So we want to make it consistent.
New Yorkers coming into here like
New York, New Jersey.
In the 80s when we left to go to New York to buy booze at 18.
Yep.
Yes.
So
they're like, we can. It's a free for all now.
That's what we're trying to do. Is we're trying to make it consistent to all of the people coming into the state.
So every surrounding state of Pennsylvania has this as legislation.
Yep. And here's Pennsylvania.
And I'm in the Poconos, where one of the largest commuter populations, in the country, not just the state. And so New York, New Jersey is a consistent. And that was actually an additional reason.
We wrote that into the bill. Yeah. That's actually written right into the bill.
Those poor people who go into New Jersey and think they're in Nazi Germany. I can't look at my
phone.
Oh, God forbid, you got to pay attention.
And that's that was actually one of the stipulations that Rosemary wrote right in there.
Does OSHA have stuff like this? I never even thought about that.
I think for heavy trucks are federal.
Okay,
federal.
so and that passed that semi truck drivers they get huge heavy fines for being on them, but you still see them on there.
CDL.
Yeah,
you do see them on. Like I said, if you see the
them on there all the time.
Yeah, but there's definitely they'll lose their CDL. So there's a very big provision there that. Stay off of it. And if you are caught on it, you will lose your CDL. I mean, like I said, with this one.
Yeah, they'll get $11,000 fine if they're on it.
I think this bill actually is very good because, again, it doesn't do harm. It's not causing penalties for your insurance to go up. It's not causing a crazy amount,
we have other support.
Yeah, we have a lot of support.
So many legislative support on this bill. We've gained so much over the years, more and more. It's really time to get this done. Yeah. It really is.
So we're in the process. We're in this epic saga. Is it at now?
Where are we in the show, right?
Yeah.
So we are on, hopefully, for a full House vote in the House of Representatives. And I think we hope to have that vote this fall. It may be in the spring, but we're hoping not. I'm working with one of the Democrat members on an amendment. We're dealing with traffic stops. And I think that that's something that, is something that I'm trying to work with to ensure that data for traffic stops is recorded in Pennsylvania, because that's a concern.
They don't record traffic stops?
No, they do, but it's in a level. So basically, for fairness of traffic stops with the environment over the last several years, there's some concerns, and I want to get the yes votes on this bill. I want them to vote for distracted driving. So they want to make sure that no one is stopped, for everybody's treated fairly. And it's just not another reason to stop someone. And that's where, some of the states have had this come up. It's not something Eileen and I like to focus on. But what I do like to focus on is the fact that I'm trying to work well with both sides of the aisle. And I think they know this bill is very important. I believe the governor's office does want it. And I believe the Democrat members want it and the Republican, but they also want something else that they're trying to get done for traffic stop data to ensure that people are fairly treated when they're stopped for any traffic violation. So they've sort of put this on this bill, and I'm working with them to try to make sure that it's done fairly.
Well, my hope is that no one is unfairly pulling people over.
Exactly.
Or stopping
exactly.
them.
We want that. We want to make sure that doesn't happen.
We do.
So not to harp on this, but eventually that data should show that it is or is not happening.
Exactly. And I think that's what they want. They want data that will be there if there is any question of people being treated unfairly in any way with traffic stops. And so trying to do that through the administration, through some federal funding, that money that is actually geared towards that. And, getting this ability to have that data. And if there is any questions or there is any concerns down the road, that it is utilized appropriately and effectively. And it's there within the state of Pennsylvania. And so this is not just for hands-free. I think though, it's been coming. It came to this bill, I think, because this bill has shown to be a bill that's important and has really grown in its popularity. Thank goodness, after all of our work. And they know this bill's important. Right. And I think they know the governor would like it. I think they know a lot of our membership would like it, our leadership. And I think they know that it's important to reality, as we said earlier, and how we live our lives and what's happening on the roadways. So I think it's a good opportunity to get some things done. But so we're working with them, and that's holding it up a little bit, but I've been as patient pretty much as I can, I think, at this point, but we're getting there. And Eileen's been very patient. I hope to have, we only have so many days in the fall here with sessions. So if worst case scenario,
little days,
I'm hoping that we have a vote, in January, February.
Are either of you optimistic of the success of this?
Yes.
Oh, I'm never giving up. You know me.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, I know you.
Oh, yeah. They're sick of seeing this face down in Harrisburg, so they know I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. We've worked too hard. We've got a lot of work to do, and that's why I chose Rosemary.
I've aged.
It seems like you guys chose each other in a weird way. It was like serendipity.
She's like this chosen one.
No.
Yeah.
Listen, it makes sense. I always say right is right, wrong is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And, Eileen's one of many families.
I can't even imagine.
And
this is the only sad part, is the longer that it keeps taking, unfortunately, every day people are still dying on the roads. And,
right.
That's the hard part for me, is that I wish when they're thinking of this down in Harrisburg, they're not thinking of the families that are getting killed every day on the roads. They're not thinking with common sense. And that's the point I keep trying to tell them, is every day that this bill doesn't go through, lives are being lost. And they're really not thinking about that. They're sitting home, having dinner with their family and all that. And they're really not thinking about the safety. And certain representatives that keep trying to mend it back, and keep pushing it, saying, it's a secondary offense, shame on them. Because they're really not thinking about the safety of people on the road.
I think too, and you said it earlier, that some representatives have kind of gotten more involved because they've been intimately involved, intimately affected by it.
Yeah.
And,
and they've been fabulous.
I don't wish anybody to experience that. And a lot of things have to do with perspective. They might not, not to play devil's advocate a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
They might not understand the scope and breadth because they're worried about, what other things that they're worried about. I wish everyone could, all right, for the next 10 minutes, we're only focused on this, and this is what we're going to do. And it's a shame that that's not what happens, but
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of people too that think I can do this.
Oh, sure.
I'm all right. Maybe somebody else can. I've had that said to me by legislators. I can have a coffee, have a cigarette in a hand, and text at the same time while I'm driving.
I've tried it. You can't.
They said it during the hearings when they were, I do this driving down. I said it while I'm driving down the road.
I just think, everything, again, it's that not me. I can handle this. I can do this. And, it in the seat that I sit in now, and as the legislators, again, every day, when something happens in a crash, are we doing our best to prevent it? And so there's still going to be crashes, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But we are not doing our best. We are not doing our best in the state law to try to help. And that's the message. I mean, that really is a message. I mean, we're not going to have a perfect environment. We're not going to have the ability to do, sorry about that.
Don't ever apologize.
Yeah. But, we're not doing our best. And this bill will help us do our best with the means that we have to enforce, with trying to be reasonable with some concerns, with traffic stops. We are doing our best if we can get this passed. Mm-hmm. And I can put my head on the pillow and say, I couldn't prevent all of them.
Yeah.
But I did my best with getting votes and going through the process and where we are with our current technology.
So if it passes the House, if you get a House vote, then what happens?
then it starts all over in the Senate.
No.
Yes.
Yes. So it goes to a committee. Yes,
Yes.
It goes to the transportation committee.
Yes. Now you know why
I
I'm
remember
old.
that part from it. Yeah, it gets passed.
Now you
and then
know
they have
I'm
to
old.
kick it over to the
This is
other
like
side.
watching The Handmaid's Tale. This is
That's what it
exhausting.
That's when
And
it
then
rolls
if they
down the
pass
steps.
it-
Remember when
Yeah.
it rolls
Now
down?
you know where the wrinkles and the old face came from and everything. This has been the hardest, fighting for justice for Paul, I thought was, hard, and it was, but I never thought that I knew it was going to be tough, but I never thought it would take me this long. I just hope my husband lives long enough to see it happen.
I hope so too.
Because
Paul
Paul is getting worse every day with ALS, and he just says to me all the time, I just hope I'm alive to see this bill go through. I
do too.
And my husband, God love him, he's been through a lot, but he just, every time I get the phone call from Rosemary, he's just like, again, this is like heart wrenching. He's like, I just want to be alive to see this. Because I whispered in Paul's ear at the morgue that once I found out how he died, I would fight for change. And this is the one thing I just can't seem to. And it's not because of us at all. It's not because of us not trying our hardest. It's just because of every little thing, and even trying to get the bill on the calendar is, whoever thought that would be such a challenge. But, even though they say it's going to go to the House, then you have to get it on the calendar. And if they don't want to put it on the calendar, it doesn't go on the calendar, which I never thought that would be such a hard process.
I think the thing that's most striking to me about all this, listening to both of you talk, is that for every one of you, both of you, how many stories are out there in every state in the country where stuff like this that no one knows about behind the scenes is a bunch of people who are trying to make a better, safer place and try to be all inclusive while doing it.
And honestly, a lot of people don't do it because it's
just too
hard.
exhausting.
But a lot of people don't even realize what I'm doing. Like a lot of people, they'll just come up for the press conference, which is great, and it's sad and it's hard and it's gut wrenching. But a lot of people are, I'll get a call. Oh, when is the bill going to come up? When are you going to work on it? And I'm like, work on it? We've been nonstop for 6 years, 24 hours a day, all the time.
That's
right. They don't realize all summer long we were at it. Really, Rosemary does a lot of it. I just do all the calling and running.
You're just the pain
going
in the
in
ass.
and out. I will say
she does a lot, and I feel bad because I don't get a chance to talk to her as much as I would like to.
Because she's doing everything else. So I'm kind of like the running woman, running.
Schwarzenegger?
Yeah,
no,
I always know she's working hard. So,
but the scariest thing was for me is when she called me right before when I didn't think I could go when the bill was up in January, and I went and all the police security were there. There was because normally everybody's in Harrisburg,
right?
And there was they had the bazookas and the guard dogs.
Where were you at? Tel Aviv?
No, I felt like
about?
I was at Harrisburg. There was nobody there, nobody. I literally got in my car and I cried. I was like, this is the scariest ever I've ever been for the Capitol.
I think
because there was nobody.
My hope was when all this COVID stuff happened, I was like, oh, you know what? Everybody's going to have an opportunity to be like, all right, let's take a breath.
Yeah.
And let's love thy neighbor a little bit. And it didn't seem to happen. It seemed to have gotten worse.
Yeah.
And my other hope is, a friend of mine just told me hope is another word for doubt. And I'm like, oh, you ruined everything for me. You ruined it all for me.
That's not good. That's not positive.
My hope, and I'm still going to stick with my definition of it, is that we do realize that it's not as bad as they make it out to be, and that there is a lot of things that we have in common and goals that we have in common. I mean, at the end of the day, Democrat, Republican, Independent, they all want. I just basically just leave me alone. I want to raise my family. I don't want to hurt anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe people are malicious at heart. Mm-hmm. I think they're taught how to do that. And that's my little spiritual spiel for now, where it's like, man, we're all sharing this planet. The division is insane. Yeah. It's absolutely insane.
Listen, at the end of the day, when I go out and I speak to colleges and schools and, hospitals and companies, I just tell them, just stay off your phone. To drive is a privilege. It really is. It's a privilege to do it. And you just want to get to point A to point B and get there safely. Just honestly, just turn it off, you know? And they're like, oh, but you know, when I'm driving, I got to make my appointments and all that. I tell everybody, this is a scenario, you know, it's a myth that you could drive your vehicle and talk on your phone, you know, but I'm like, do the old scenario, have somebody call you, watch a TV show, talk on the phone, and then try to remember the conversation in the TV show. You're not going to remember it.
You'll never remember.
And that's when people go, that's when I was trying to talk to some of the representatives and they're like, you know, this is during the hearing, the first one we had with John.
Transportation.
Yeah. When we came out through the transportation, when John Taylor, when he invited me to speak, you know, and he's like, when people are driving down their roads, they're saying, you know, they don't remember the drive. They don't remember the building. Well, that's inattention blindness, because when you're driving down the road and you're driving, you know, you don't remember the scenery and all that because you're so involved in that conversation.
It's
you
like
don't remember.
It's almost like your auto, I don't know what that system's called, where it just takes over.
Yeah. And then, but that's when a child will run out in front of you and your braking time slows down. That's why people run stop signs. That's why they run the lights. That's when, because you're so caught up in that conversation that you don't remember the buildings or the path that you took. You know, you got to the drive, but you don't remember a lot.
Yeah, the ignorant thing, I think, is in the zone.
Right.
I was in the zone.
Right. Because, and then that's what I say, you know, use that conversation with that phone call, watch a TV show, and then try to sit there and remember it. You're not going to remember too. You know, going back to 2013, a bunch of us met up in Utah and we went and...
I heard they have Mormons there.
Yeah, there's a couple. There's a couple. And we went to a healing retreat and I think you met one of my friends that went there. Elisa. Did you meet Elisa? No.
I don't know.
I think you did at
faces,
the one.
I remember.
Yeah. So anyway, well, she was there and we went to the University of Utah and we met David Strayer. And he does all the cognitive distractions there for AAA. He does all the research for AAA. And he said, you know, people are going to start driving and being on their phones and all that. And once I sat in the simulator and I thought that was the day I decided to turn the off button on my phone. Before then, I didn't do that. I never text when I was driving. I still can. I have big fingers. So anyway, when I came out of there.
That's a side note.
When I came out of there that day, my whole life changed forever. I did not. That was the day I decided.
Because you realized.
I realized how bad distraction. He said it's going to be like a level 5 hurricane. People are going to start text talking. And when they say, like, I want to go to the store, I'm going to go next door. And they're going to start driving around. They're going to go crazy. People, it's going to become like a level 5 hurricane.
A lot of times it's like a bunch of blind cattlemen. They're just,
scary.
I don't know where I'm going.
Figure it this way. Like he was saying years ago, you know, when they were dropping the bombs, they only had one pilot and they were missing them all. So they put the co-pilot in and then that person was dropping on the bombs. They were hitting them all. It's a myth. You just cannot do it. But people think that they can do it every day. And that's why all these crashes are going to start going up. And as we speak,
so
they're constantly going up.
Is there statistics? Is there?
There are statistics, but
Yeah.
as Eileen mentioned, even with her son's crash, you know, they're not accurate.
None
and
of them
so
are.
they're strongly underreported.
So that's a safe assumption, is that they are
100%.
underreported.
100%.
And a lot of times too, even on a fender bender or hitting in the back, people aren't going to admit that they were on their phone.
Right.
Also, so thank God, not in a fatality, but even in other crashes, they often don't admit. And so you don't really have the phone. It just, you know, somebody had a crash. So you're missing a lot of data. And you know, whenever it comes to the data piece, and I know Eileen says a lot of different things too with it, I really just say, just look at the road when you're on it and you will see what needs to be done. It doesn't, you don't even need the data. I hate to say
I think everybody can be like, oh, I know. I see everybody doing it.
You don't even need it
time.
because it's just, as they say, I know we don't refer to accident, but it's an accident waiting to happen.
Yeah. Crash waiting to happen. Yep.
Right.
Well, did you guys have fun?
We did. It was good.
I wish
anything we can to get
were wonderful.
attention, anything we can get the attention to tell people to just stay off it.
I want to know if you want to come back. You know,
Sure.
hopefully,
Absolutely.
Good news.
hopefully that
Yeah,
we
say
get
we'll
to
have
hear
our
in
law.
the fall or the spring about whether or not.
We'll have our law.
Well, I don't know. Apparently, if it passes the House, it's the clock starts again, and it's
We're always
like
under
watching
pressure.
the remake of the Thriller. It's like, oh my God.
But go ahead, Eileen.
No, I just we're always talking about it, regardless of whether it's coming up on the calendar or not. Poor Rosemary, I'm always like, where are we? Where are we? Where are we? I don't have time. We're doing this. We're doing that. I think whenever they see my number come up, they're like, avoid, 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 abort.
No, everybody loves Eileen.
So how can people get in touch with you if they want to share their story, or if they want to help, or they want to advocate
speak.
A little bit, or because you speak, you go around and talk, you tell their story.
Yeah, I go everywhere. They can reach me at 570.
No, don't give your phone number.
Why?
You insane?
Why not?
Huh?
Well, it's all over.
Oh my God.
Why? I want them to have it.
I don't want to be the guy.
Well, you want them at Neener at MSN, NEI?
Yeah, that's okay. You could do that. I don't want your cell phone. Cheapers Magoo.
It's all over. If you Google my name, my phone number is going to come up. I have a card.
Full transparency there. Look at that.
Listen, all right, I'll give my email.
Oh,
it's
man.
NEI.
My butt got real tight when you started doing that. I was like, oh, boy.
Stop it, Mark. It's NEINER@MSN.com. And it's Eileen Miller.
And then is there a group on Facebook or anything?
It's just my Facebook page.
EI.
LEEN Wolkers, WOELKERS Miller, MILLER. Honestly, I don't mind giving my number, Mark.
I don't want you to. I don't feel comfortable with it.
Mark, you have it.
We've known each other. I'm worried about the people who've been home for 18 months going like, I'm bored.
Oh, I know. I get like 10 guys every day that look like doctors in Afghanistan, but I don't accept them.
You get 10 Afghani doctors. Hello.
They're all fake.
She gives her phone number out everywhere.
No.
And to help and to advocate. I mean, do you have a website for?
Yeah, absolutely. Repbrown.com. And then my district office number is 570-420-8301. And that's my district. That's my district office. That's my but I have a staff. But I have a staff that is helpful. But yeah, if anybody wants to be involved, share a story, help with advocacy, I think also anybody listening, talk to their legislators, talk to their representatives, senators, and let them know if they believe that this is fair and reasonable, that they want them to vote yes for it.
Folks, none of us want to take that stupid thing out of our hands, but we should. And
especially behind the wheel.
Especially being behind the wheel. I would like to advocate for everybody to throw them in the ocean, but then now it's
we'd be more
environmental problem. So you're never going to hear the end of that. I want to thank both of you. Rosemary came all the way from Stroudsburg to be here, and I'm so gracious and or grateful, whatever. I don't know words.
It makes me feel like I'm in college again, coming to Scranton. Yeah, but I feel good. I feel young.
Next up is Smashing Pumpkins. So thank you so much. I wish you all the best, and I am confident you're gonna reach that finish line and even more.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
All right, you want to say it? What a week, right?
Okay, you ready?
Yeah, ready?
1, 2, 1.
What a week.